Hi there. Thanks so much for joining me today. I just wanted to take the opportunity to share this concept about everything pins to leadership. And so this is an introduction to that concept. Um, First, I want to just start by saying, when's the last time you heard people saying, the problem is fill in the blank? The problem is communication. The problem is culture. The problem is those millennials. The problem is my skills aren't being leveraged. Whatever those things are, ultimately, the reason for these problems ties back to leadership. So, this idea about everything pins to leadership. And it was interesting when I started kind of putting this together. The very first thing that I wanted to talk about is a negative thing, right? The problem is dot, dot, dot. And I actually wrote a white paper about why can't we just be positive? And in this white paper, I started to, because I've been doing HR for so long, um, I put together 4 reasons on why we can't just be positive. Number one, it's a righteous issue, right? We want to prove that we're right and you're wrong. And so this righteousness is the first reason why we can't just be positive. The second reason why we can't just be positive is it's easy to deflect. And when we deflect, guess what? The attention's not on us. So being negative is a deflection mechanism. The third reason is I call the lazy rock thrower. And if you imagine that, it's actually pretty brilliant. If I throw enough stones at other people, then it goes back to that second point. The attention is not on me. But the lazy rock thrower means that it's easier to throw stones than get down into the complexities and the issue and start peeling that onion apart and finding out what those sources of the problems are. It's a lot easier just to be a lazy rock thrower and throw stones from a negative perspective. The fourth reason why we can't just be positive, it's addictive. If you imagine your conversations with friends or family, when it gets onto a negative topic, it begins to take on a life of its own. And there's a lot of passion and energy when we talk about negative things for some reason. And I do think that it's an addictive mechanism or outcome. So, anyways, I just thought that was interesting to think about reasons why we have this negativity and this negative vibe. So a little bit about myself. Again, my name is Doug Miller. I'm originally from Arizona. I lived in San Diego for 10 years and Boston for about 15. I diverted my path early on. I got my degree in business administration with an emphasis in marketing, which note that has actually helped me extremely well in success in the world of HR. But I transitioned early on into HR. I got my first job out of college in a market research firm. And I quickly determined that wasn't my thing. I did not want to sit in a phone room tower and supervise a bunch of market researchers and do focus groups or whatnot. That just wasn't my thing. But I noticed that there was a need in this organization. And the need at the time was there was no buffer between the owners and the rest of the organization. So my style is I put a proposal together and I said, these are the things that need to happen, right? We need onboarding, we need training, we need someone to do the employee issues and the challenges. And that's how I got into HR. And it was me finding a need, putting a proposal together, and that's how I started my career. So 25 years later, I say that I've been doing this and studying employee and leadership behavior while in HR. And that what keeps me going is that curiosity about people. So I was part of the global HR team at Lego. I was part of I was at the UPS store, which at the time was Mailbox, et cetera, the headquarters there in San Diego. Yankee Group, I was the head of global HR there. Catalyst and Group M, that's an SEO, SEM marketing agency. Mobiquity, which is app development, so software engineers. Isotope was in the music and entertainment space, software development, and also hardware. I've had some really fortunate opportunities to impact teams in Canada, Denmark, Germany, Hungary, India, which was an amazing experience, Japan, Netherlands, and the United Kingdom. But my passion for really impacting the world of leadership and the impact that HR, people operations, can bring to organizations is where HR Focus Point was born. Everything Pins to Leadership is the title of my book that I'm writing, and this concept that we'll talk about today. But I am driven by a disruptive HR mindset and an integrated talent management, when all the elements of human capital management kind of comes together and becomes dependent on one another. Again, what keeps me going in all of this is a level of curiosity. I heard a woman, Lena Nair, Chief HR Officer at Unilever, and this really resonated with me, that from an HR perspective, we're no longer in the service of the business. We're at the center of it. We're not just filling the cracks, right, from an administrative perspective and being so responsive to the issues around us, but we're laying the road. We are part of the solutions. We are part of the future. And that really resonated with me. The reason why I wanted to spend some time on that is because that's my story. And I've been doing this for quite some time. And depending where we're at in our lives and in our careers, we are creating our own stories. So what story are you writing? What are you going to say on that impact? And I'm constantly learning, and I'm a student, and I'm constantly writing my story. And so that's a challenge for you to ask yourselves, what story are you writing, and what type of impact are you having on other people? So the beliefs about this Everything Pins to Leadership is that every one of us impacts others one way or the other. We have an impact on others. We all know, right, philosophically, that not everyone can manage other people. It is difficult. Managing folks is complex, and it's a challenge. In a diverse community, it is very difficult. We know that. But I do believe that we all have the capacity to take on some leadership qualities. Now, you may lead people down negative, dark paths, and people will follow, unfortunately, some of those leadership qualities. But what we want to talk about, that Everything Pins to Leadership, is the positive elements. How do we have a positive impact on other people? How can we lead people down paths through motivation and making their lives richer and a feeling of success? So we must increase the capacity of our leaders in our organizations. We increase that capacity so leaders can be human through a connected leadership principle. Lead through times of conflict and uncertainty using an emotional intelligence of how people are approaching problems in situations and circumstances around us. Realize the power of personal responsibility, not only in ourselves, but in others. Those are elements how we increase the capacity of our leaders to deploy and acknowledge that personal development only is the thing that leads to professional success. All the problems ultimately find their way back to leadership. And once we begin to explore this topic, not only today, but hopefully in the future in my engagement with you, it does come back to leadership. Teams take on the characteristics of their leader, good or bad. But there is an alternative, right? That alternatively, if people aren't taking on those characteristics, cracks begin to form, fissures form, right? Dissension forms. So those are the beliefs that Everything Pins to Leadership. But why do we lack leadership? Either, we lack our leadership because we're deflecting and protecting ourselves, and that's a reason. We're new, right? And a lot of people enter new management roles, and they are never given the tools or the mentorship to be successful. So they're just new, and they're growing and they're learning. People sometimes believe by hoarding information, or the information we have about other people give us power and give us strength, which is not a sign of good leadership. Either there's a lack of confidence, right? We're just not confident in our ability to lead others, or sometimes we have a misplaced confidence. We think that being an alpha male or an alpha female, that is the way, and to talk loud and to talk over other people is the way that is leadership, and it's not. And the other thing is, it's just ignorance, right? We ignore things. I say ignorance. We ignore the problems around us, and as leaders, we need to fix those problems. We need to fix those and find those solutions. The good thing is that we are all wired to learn. Us individually, we're wired to learn and we want to get better, but those people that we impact around us are also wired to learn. We're problem solvers. As human beings, we want to find out those solutions, or what's the reasons behind certain problems ultimately, but we have to give the platform for people to explore those solutions to problems. But because we are curious, right? We're wired to learn because we're curious. We want to figure things out. We want to get under there and figure things out. But ultimately, we want to have a purpose. And that's where leadership has a tremendous opportunity in front of them to give people a purpose, whatever that purpose is. If you're an engineer, you want to be the best darn engineer that you can be. You want to be the best leader. You want to have impact others. People want to have whatever that purpose is. It can take on a lot of different forms, but ultimately people want to have a purpose. We are always surrounded by small moments, what I call snackable moments to learn. It's not the big, profound things and our big challenges that we're able to navigate. Sure, we learn from those things, but we're constantly surrounded by snackable moments to learn. And those are the elements that we are all wired to learn. And it is our opportunity as leaders to take on that responsibility to allow each moment to be a learning opportunity for us and those around us. Now, this is where it gets a little slippery, a little difficult, because as in marketing, we have marketing personas, right? We have customers that we go after, and we have profiles of these customers that are in our target audience. But employees take on their own personas. They have their own profiles. People show up in our lives and in our organizations for very different motivators. So there's a variety of different personas, how people will show up. And this is where that diversity and inclusion comes in, the richness of diversity and inclusion, bringing the right people at the right time into the conversation. And it is tricky and it is difficult. And that's why management of people is complex and it is challenging. But being human through connected leadership is the key. If everything's going to pin to leadership, we have to show our human side and connect with people, as each of these individuals have their own motivators and their own drivers. And it is our opportunity to allow them to experience success and happiness. So it is a journey. So this leadership development, these are all breakout sessions that we can have from this very conversation. Is the problem this, or is it that? Is it leadership? Is it really communication, or is it leadership not taking on the responsibility on how they can figure out a better communication, for example? Fundamentals of understanding how to manage people, right? There's some basic blocking and tackling of managing people. Transitioning from being a friend or to a manager, right? Sometimes we were colleagues and now all of a sudden we're managers. How do we influence people in different ways when we take on different roles? The leadership principles, the respect in the workplace, diversity and inclusion, which is so rich and so exciting to talk about. Leading globally distributed team, creating this quote presence, that not physical presence, but making sure that people, we know that people are there and those people that can really make an impact to us and to our organization. Understanding and leading conflict through emotional intelligence. I love this idea about re-recruiting existing talent through motivation. What do we do when we hire new people? We try to woo candidates. Right? This is an amazing organization, and we try to express how much we can add value to them as individuals. But what happens when they become an employee? They get into the work they do, they get into the grind, and we forget about wooing our existing talent and motivating them constantly. Building highly effective talent acquisition teams in a very hot talent market, realizing the power of an integrated approach to talent management, and having an intention to the way that we build culture, so intentional culture. I love this quote here from the late Stephen Hawking. The greatest enemy of knowledge is not ignorance. It is the illusion of knowledge. So when we think we know all the answers, It's the illusion that we have knowledge is the greatest enemy. Okay. And I also like this idea that we can do anything we want. Ultimately, the world's not going to stop spinning. There may be bigger problems, right, or bigger risks that we take, but we can do anything we want. And as a leader, we have to know how to navigate those challenges. So the foundation for leadership and differentiated leadership is setting a personal and professional foundation. Be consistent, but agile. It's like being a parent. People want to know that they're going to get a consistent, that they're going to get a consistent experience from their mother or their father, right? Employees want the same thing. Staff wants the same thing. They want to know, or they don't want to know, what kind of Doug am I going to get today? But you have to show that flexibility. Be innovative. Challenge the obvious. Practice humility. Be confident. Demonstrate gravitas. One of my first leaders that I reported into, Cheryl Radicke, I still remember her today. She had this aura about her, and when she entered a room, she commanded the attention because of her confidence and ability to include people into the conversation. Connected leadership is another element of differentiated leadership. Engage, inspire, and motivate. Balance empowerment and accountability. You cannot have one without the other. And this is another topic that we can completely pick apart and get into on why that's so important to find that balance. Be on your game. Good leaders anticipate. They're proactive. Be resilient. Discover those opportunities and those challenges around us. Achieve personal responsibility. Again, another topic that really we can get in depth into. But I can tell you one thing. Achieving personal responsibility is the most freeing element once you can discover that about what can I do about it? And if the answer is nothing, you move on to those things that you can actually have an impact on. So achieving personal responsibility for yourself and those around you is really significant. So, but view employee challenges as a development opportunity rather than disciplinary. Even if I get into a situation where I have to terminate somebody, I'm hoping that there was a whole exercise of a development of this particular employee. And when they're walking out the door, I continuously want them to learn from this experience so they're better human beings as they move on to their next opportunity. Having a macro perspective, think strategically, but actually is able to execute tactically. Embraces change with good judgment and prudent decision-making. Make things happen. This is about your journey and your impact on others. It's a collection of leaders that makes an organization thrive when they work in concert with one another. Discover that freedom of personal responsibility and inspire someone today, and start with your team. I truly hope that you got something out of this introduction of Everything Pins to Leadership, and I hope that we have the opportunity to actually continue the conversation. Thank you so much. Hope to talk to you soon. Bye-bye.